Well, hello. This is the Harboring Light. I'm Mary. I give a conservative take about the world around me. So this particular episode focuses in on MTV. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to talk about the aspects of MTV as far as the launch and the development and the reasons behind it, for it being created, and then the behemoth that it came to be and the golden era in the 80s, and then how it sizzled and still ride the wave in the 90s and everything, and then how in the 2000s it started to flatten out and how it diverged to what it is today. All right, so let's tune in. MTV. Many catchphrases have came from that, especially in the beginning of it in the 80s and the height of everything about MTV. The whole thing with I want my MTV and the different transitions that was shown as far as incorporating animation with music and fashion and merging that together with, for example, the idea of pop art and fashion with the whole aspect of Andy Warhol, how his particular type of art made more of a presence in the 80s, and you saw that interlaced in the, as I was saying about I Want My MTV sort of aesthetic of what they would show as commercial breaks or interludes or so have you for the different popular artists at the time talking about MTV and you saying that catchphrase, and then the iconic moment of the moon landing and saying MTV landed on the moon is the preference of how prevalent this will take off and be a part of history. And so it's telling how everything comes to the impact of what it is today, the so to speak of how not MTV isn't the only network that's done this. It's been, particularly with music, other networks have succumbed to this, when VH1 and when Fusion existed, it was a music channel, and then it just went to other things, scripted television, and then they did a deal where they had interviews and talked to celebrities and stuff, but it's still not in the rotation of network platforms. Well, network platforms aren't a thing now, so in a rotation of you can't find it on a streaming device anymore. It's just not part of, cable is still a thing. It's just not part of cable or satellite anymore. But going back to that, so in my research, that is really up for debate because, some research that I found said that the reason for the ending of MTV has to do with YouTube. But I really think that's just one of those cop-out things, really, to be quite honest about that. Because, and I was talking about this with my husband, too. We noticed, and I noticed, too, as early as the mid to early 2000s, before before YouTube became more of a prevalent thing, MTV was starting to phase out for the aspects of showing it, touching on music per se by showing other reality television by MTV Cribs, and then showing the making of a music video. I'm trying to remember those shows. And what was really prevalent, though, was the controversy and the aspect of TRL. So with TRL, which is Total Request Live, so before then it was called MTV Dial. And so, you would dial in, and I think this was going on in the 80s and throughout the 90s, and you would dial in, you would request a song, and, things would get through. And then it was really a notable thing and ending with results, and show the results of the aspect of what people actually wanted as far as music. And it, unfortunately, be it as it may, now this is my point of view about it. So be it as it may, the industry took in and said, no, we can't have that, actually having the aspect of what people actually want, the youth actually want to listen to and so forth. So we're going to, take our hand in it and kind of do something else, which is the prevalent example of that with TRL. So, people would, they would say, calling in, the most requested is Britney Spears, Christina Aguilera, stuff like that. The industry pushing these pop artists out there. And then when in reality, they kind of phased out rather quickly as far as the aspect of, pop from that point of view of, I guess, commercial pop, so to speak. And, the aspects of boy bands, too, didn't really last all that well because of the influx of, particularly with different alternative rock and with different types of pop, and then, competing with rap and hip hop and all that stuff that kind of, phased out too, because that's sort of a particular niche thing when you think about it as far as the boy band point of view, that, their audience grows up, they grow out of it, and then they move on to something else. And so, it was one on that, and then two on the aspect of the industry, having an advertisement and a commercial aspect or investment in these particular bands. And so, and people started to notice that, hey, that's not, people aren't really listening to that anymore. We're, what's going on? We're, and then if I'm not mistaken, I think it was, but, y'all feel free to give me comments about this, either through X, through email, through Substack, and of course, through YouTube. Now, I think it was a bunch of college kids, and they got together and they called in and they requested a particular song for TRL to play. And they called in so many times. And then it wasn't counted or noted as them calling in. And so it's like, what's going on with that? And that's sort of, there's more disdain toward the aspect of MTV and its impact on music. And it's really a shame, because music, for better or worse, but when it's really good for the better, it really brings people together, and it gives a common, and in the aspect of bringing people together, it gives a common bond of, of something to relate to. So with that said, and the aspect too of using the visual and then going into the visual arts of expressing the ideas of what the musical artist is saying and what the song is saying, that's even more prevalent too, to where it brings together a sort of community and to the different genres of music, and to where it starts the conversation about the aspect of what people think and how people feel when they listen to this particular type of song, what have you. And then the concept of video music is not a new thing. It's from what I understand, is in the origin of the German aspect of video art, of video essays, of that type of medium of expressionism with art, and sort of that hyper super realism, and then that linking into the aspect of the popular waves of how musicians made an impact in society. So for instance, with Queen and their star power, and how that became, and then many more bands following them, that became a thing to where they became noticeable to do something about this, to where music videos are more prevalent, to a way to get into getting more of a broader and more of a mass audience, and to knowing who these people are, whereas versus records and radio. All right, so here we go. I'm going to get into the factual aspects of MTV. Okay, so here we go. So before MTV was a thing, it was brought to QB, I believe the pronunciation of that. But anyway, the Time Warner or Warner Amps satellite entertainment company, they were playing around with the aspect of music television and subscribership with cable. So, and then it goes into the aspect of what I was saying, and then this is another point of view of what I'm saying about music videos. So here we go. The idea of the video itself was not new. African American performers Count Basie, Louis Armstrong, and Bessie Smith appeared in video clips with their songs in the late 40s. Dick Clark's American Bandstand show offered live lip-sync musical performances to a national television audience beginning in 1957. The Beatles released their song Strawberry Fields on video in 1967, and other 1970 television shows like Soul Train and Concert, Midnight Special, and Rock Concert offered live or recorded musical performances, but MTV gambled that with the viewing audience in 1981 and was ready for a 24-hour-a-day music channel. So the brain behind MTV was Robert Pittman, a former radio disc jockey who had become an executive at WASEC. Pittman hoped that MTV, along with the premium channels of Nickelodeon and the Movie Channel, would give his company an edge in gaining subscribers in the highly competitive cable market. The company's $20 million investment soon proved worthwhile. So MTV's audience grew from just over 2 million to, at the end of 4 months, to 22 million by 84. And advertising revenues kept pace. Though the channel had pulled in just 7 million in advertising revenues within 18 months, by 84, it was earning 1 million a week. In many ways, MTV had an ideal cable product. Its content cost the channel nothing, for recording companies provided the videos free of charge in order to promote their bands. And see, it was in that too. That's the thing too, where, was it that where companies, particularly music companies, were getting tired of that aspect of being, constantly promoting and only getting a certain realm of people, pushing particular artists, pushing them out there, and then waving the other artists in the back, pushing them in the back. And also a whole lot of things to, I think about, as far as the failure of not showcasing music anymore, as far as the aspect of what MTV is today, pushing towards reality television. Is it a whole thing where it's cheaper to keep her sort of aspect of this thing where, you don't have to, you can get unsuccessful or people who want to break into the industry, you don't have to pay them that much, and just do scripted television, and then that's another offset of not having to invest so much money. Or it's a lot of things to think about, when it, as I'm saying, when it comes to the atmosphere of why MTV is the way it is today. So what do you, I also like to know, what do you all think about that aspect of why MTV is more reality based instead of actual music? So in many ways, MTV had an ideal cable company. Its content cost the channel nothing, for recording companies providing the videos for free of charge in order to promote their bands, and advertisers eager to reach MTV's demographic of consumers between the ages of 12 and 34. So it offered everything from food to clothes to other youth-oriented products. Through the early 80s, MTV viewers fed a steady diet of videos and ads, and rocking around the clock. So the first videos to air on MTV appeared rudimentary and awkward. And, it's quite funny because it was a running joke too. Particularly, Hall & Oates, to be prime examples. They just took it and ran with it. They even said it. And then the whole reason why, because when VH1 Classic became a thing, and then stuff like that, when it would show the older music videos from the 80s and everything, and then I would see some specials on other television shows when I was growing up in the 90s and the early 2000s and stuff. And all these artists, they from the 80s and before then, and particularly with the Hall & Oates, with Behind the Music, and then them speaking on other shows. So saying the whole thing, we know that our music videos were campy and cheesy, but we just went with it, and then we got even more of a fan base. So it's quite interesting. So the total video rotation during the channel's initial months was a scant 125 videos. The common denominator for the videos was their slip hood production, non-existent special effects, minimal costs, crude narratives, and home movie types of appearances. So, MTV's innovative format and seamless blend of content and advertising drew much attention for academics eager to document the immersion of postmodern frame of mind. So David Tetzlaff observed the Journal of Communication Inquiry that MTV denies the existence of all but the moment, and that moment exists only in the screen. So in Monopoly Television, Jack Banks wrote that MTV does the linear concepts of history, rejecting conventional distinction between past, present, and future, instead placing itself in a timeless present. And so, with that aspect of, and then there's been jokes about that too, and particularly Everybody Loves Raymond, in the early seasons. Hey, for instance, him and his brother, but particularly they more with Raymond Ramon, making the joke, hey, when they were trying to cut out and make a debut, they didn't know what to do for their father, for a tribute for him. Hey, what we were doing, we were trying to do that MTV, quick editing style. Hey, here and now, present, forget everything else of taking the time to polish it out. We just want to do it fast, quick, and be in the moment about it. And, that goes without saying with the aspect of only, and then, other critics getting into the problem, seeing the problem with that of the producers of MTV and the staff and everything else with that, with having that tunnel vision of only seeing the here and now and not thinking about what the future holds for the company, and then not going toward the past to see what was done before, or think about how they changed everything as far as the aspect of music, and then taking that in into how to maneuver their way toward the future. The result was an experience that centered viewers, encouraging them to identify more with the products and images on screen than with more historically significant communities of meaning, such as families, political parties, or social class. Even after MTV changed to a more traditional format, in the mid-'80s, after so many advertisement and television programs began to mimic MTV's visual style, the perception remained, and the critics agreed MTV led to the post-modernism cultural vanguard. So MTV's rapid emergence as both a prolific cable channel and a cultural force soon drew critics. So it was a thing where it says that some black artists accused MTV of racism for what they felt was a real underrepresentation of non-white musicians, through MTV defining itself with the claim that it merely mirrored trends in album-oriented rock. So it says in many cases, Michael Jackson's mid-'80s dominance as king of the video tempered such claims, which is true. It's one of those things where, you gotta pay attention to the aspect of, is that really true? If these, particularly with Michael Jackson and him, skyrocketing to the aspect of the king of pop, and then other artists after him, and then getting into the aspect of something like MTV Raps and so forth. If that was the case where they're trying to shun away from the aspect of black artists, would those things really exist? Would that be a thing? And then in the aspect of the immersion, and they got a lot of crap for that too, but the immersion of when from two different genres of music come together and they try to emulate a different perspective about a song, it can be really impactful and changing for the aspect of music and how it can be done in the future. So, for instance, Run DMC and Aerosmith. So, Rock This Way was that particular song, that was an Aerosmith song. And so Run DMC, had the idea of changing it and bringing it out into a new perspective for a new generation. And that just they took it and ran it, and then, as they say, the rest is history. So here we go with President Ronald Reagan, Surgeon General C. Everett Koop, charged that the breed of video clips, which he characterized as racy montages of violence, and then scantily clad women and the surrealistic images, could be dangerous to normal or healthy emotional relationships between the sexes. And media mogul Ted Turner accused MTV of producing a nation of Hitler youth. Now, that's a lot to say. And then, it's interesting that Ted Turner, saying stuff like that, because, you got to take a second look. Why are you using such a high, on the aspect of what they say a hyperbole, but such a very demeaning and just a very cruel, just bringing it down and getting to the simple aspect of what it is. Very cruel tagline of a network to say about a network, when you got to keep in mind that he was a fierce competitor in trying to get his hand in the game of making a profit and then making an impact with music, with his programming as far as VH1, in that video hits one, that little sneer there, hey, we're video hits one, look at us. And then, with that targeting towards the older sort of aspect of people who listen to music, with the softer side of popular music. And I talked about this on my Substack article, and I'll link my Substack link in this episode, of course. And then the BET, launching BET, and then in the early days of BET, it was a lot of artists on there. It was, particularly black artists, and having all these music videos and interviews and stuff like that, doing, honing in on that niche market of, black entertainment. So, what is that? And then also, that's a whole nother thing too with BET, what it is today, just this degradation of that whole aspect. You say that you want, representation and respect, but have you seen the things that BET pushes nowadays? Is quite alarming. So, here we go. It says cable music channel 84. These would not be the first times that MTV would be accused of undermining the morals of American youth. But it was difficult to tell if such concerns were legitimate responses to real increases in the amount of sex and violence on the screen, or an ongoing anxiety felt by members of older generations about the music that makes their children dance. MTV might be truly dangerous, or old folks might just be scared of rock and roll, as according to the source. And that, those saying that's a arbitrary thing too, but it is interesting. So this article is quite interesting by pinpointing towards that. So it's also one of these things too where not everything is black and white. It's a lot of gray, and it's one of those things you got to keep in mind. If you're so in tune and worried about what your children are watching, be involved in their life. Don't just send them off to the wolves or send them off in the breeze and not knowing what's going on. Talk to your children and be involved that way. And then it's another thing where not all older people and so forth have the mentality, oh, this darn music is just gonna ruin, and it's just the degradation, and being have that better mentality about life. It's more to it than that. So MTV experienced growing pains during the mid-'80s. On the one hand, all was going well for MTV, and on the other, video channels have provided such a lucrative way to market music that fully 75% of singles released were now backed by a video. Moreover, MTV was acquired in 1987 by the emerging cable giant Viacom, a company that was able to get MTV into more American homes than ever before. Yet for all of these successes, MTV's Nielsen ratings were declining for their thriller-induced heights of a 1.5 down to a 7 rating. So the channel's coverage of the Live Aid music festivals was harshly criticized, and the British art rockers like Duran Duran, the Eurythmics, and Boy George, who helped MTV establish an identity, were going out of style. So ad revenues declined 10% during the first half of 1987, prompting Time Music to wonder if MTV was an idea whose time has already gone. The concern was premature, however, for the one thing MTV has never done is fail to meet the ever-changing demands of the interests of the youthful audience. In its second phase, MTV devised a radical strategy of downplaying music videos and inventing their own programs. In this way, MTV hoped to become a more traditional television channel, thus breaking its most postmodern elements. New shows introducing included Club MTV Dance, The Week in Rock, news related to the world of rock and roll, and Remote Control, a parody of the traditional game show with contests strapped into a lazy boy recliners and fed pork rinds and cheese puffs and asked moronic questions. Most innovative was the program Yo MTV Raps, a compilation of rap videos by black artists. Although MTV executives were hesitant about the show's potential popularity, viewer response was tremendous, and the show quickly became one of the most popular summer programs. By the mid-1990s, rap and hip-hop would become MTV's mainstays. MTV realized another breaking through the early 90s with its shows like Unplugged. And, with Unplugged, that was very interesting how they did things. That it was intimate to where the artists would sit down and sing, and then it was, for the most part, acoustic, a cappella, and it would just sing to the audience, and it had an intimate setting of people in the audience and so forth. And here we go. Let me get into talking about that. So, which shows top rock bands playing acoustic instruments before a small audience. With this show, MTV achieved 1990s media nirvana surge. The Unplugged show generated singles for radio play. So videos that could be plugged everywhere else in the channel's lineup, and albums that could be sold in record stores, by allowing the spirit of rock and roll to seep into news and comedy, and by showcasing the innovative music that was coming out of the predominantly black rap and hip-hop community. So MTV gave viewers a reason to stick around. MTV continued experiments with content in the 1990s, offering such shows as The Real World and Beavis and Butthead. In The Real World, a group of college-age strangers were thrown together in a luxurious sparkling house, and sparkling house that is. And a camera filmed every moment of their attempts to learn to live together. So, this goes into the aspect of competing with daytime soap operas. More controversial was Beavis and Butthead, a cartoon about two completely amoral teenage slackers. These antisocial characters set fire to houses, used frogs, or batting practices, obsessed about women and farts, and were in all mind-numbingly stupid. As I digress. The show, which was an instant success, became a lightning rod for public fears about the amorality of youth. Not conceitedly launched its creator, Mike Judd, to fame. Judd would soon leave MTV to produce a cartoon. As they say, the rest is history. King of the Hill for Fox. So MTV's mid-1990s dating show, Singled Out, also proved a launching pad for the ex-Playboy playmate and co-show host Jenny McCarthy. McCarthy's combination of California surf, babe beauty, and bad girl antics, gross jokes, and goofy face soon launched her an NBC sitcom out of this. While MTV's programming echoed with the channel's trademark, it had a youthful attitude. Its popularity and crossover into movies and mainstream television meant that MTV's attitude was now embraced more readily by the larger culture, which had itself been influenced by MTV. By the 90s, MTV was available in more than 50 million American homes as a part of many providers' basic cable packages. Its growing influence and the channel's desire to awaken a political consciousness in its youthful audience led to MTV to campaign against Gulf War in 1991 and to promote voter registration through such devices as Rock the Vote. And that's one of those things too, where, pushing the political, so be it, liberal agenda, where, it would have been much better to have an objective point of view, to where, it's just calling it what and showing the Gulf War for what it was. And then, talking about voting to youth and educating youth about voting and the impact and the aspect of voting, what it does for society and what it does for you as a citizen. And just, talking about that from an educational point of view that's not biased, but it's one of those things. So, Rock the Boat commercials sharing rock stars and sponsoring registration drives at college campuses and rock concerts. MTV's most visible entry into the political arena was the 1992 interview with the Democratic presidential candidate Bill Clinton. So for nearly 90 minutes, Clinton fielded questions from a hand-picked audience of earnest youth. At the same time, MTV was becoming a pillar of American pop culture and was spreading across the globe. So, MTV debuted in Europe in '87, offering its first European video, The Dire Straits' Money for Nothing. And, out of this came the MTV chant. So MTV Europe began with more than 1.6 million subscribers in 14 different countries and soon became especially popular in Eastern Europe. Countries like Hungary, for instance. So Western capitalist culture that's influenced in this nation, MTV provided so apt at displaying. So MTV, and after this, we got MTV Brazil, which launched in '90, MTV Latino, which followed in '93, and both channels quickly became popular with Spanish-speaking audiences. And also, it's quite interesting with Shakira when she was starting out as a artist in the '90s, and her singing in Spanish on Unplugged. That was quite a pivotal moment in the Latin community and so forth. And yeah, that's goes to show the impact of music, how it when it's done right, how it can just cross boundaries, and particularly with international boundaries, and then bring people together as far as the aspect of music and in language too, with that aspect. So on MTV Latino in 1995, viewers from Mexico from the tip of Chile watched the birth of a new language, Spanglish, as VJs use expressions like Chiquinos, what they were saying, which meant check us out. So a former minister of culture commented about the culture impact of MTV. The world changed in a very short time. Suddenly one world fell, and it was absolutely seduced by the world that imposed itself. That one in a world without utopias, the market becomes a new utopia. Not surprisingly, MTV executives took a more optimistic view of their global distribution. MTV's Sarah Levinson claimed that music is the global language. We want to be the global rock and roll village where we can talk to the youth worldwide. So by the mid-1990s, MTV had largely succeeded at reaching that goal and promoted its vision of culture to 270 million households in more than 125 countries scattered across 5 continents. The MTV vision was thoroughly rooted in commercialism for common language of viewers across the world and music goods. So Michael Jackson and McDonald's, Nirvana, and Nike, Beck, and Coke. To some critics, MTV's global reach seemed like an Orwellian Big Brother nightmare, with rock and roll attitude providing the cover from multinational corporations to push their products to a world of consumerism. But the actual picture was more complex, with some 90% of the MTV's programming produced locally to coincide with differing regional tastes. MTV viewers the world over loved rock and roll. But it was clear that they loved different rock and roll at different times. In 1996, the hottest tracks of MTV Latino were Madonna, Queen, and the Rolling Stones. On MTV Brazil, the favorite was Silverchair. While on MTV Europe, Michael Jackson and Tina Turner dominated playlists for their part. MTV corporate officers enjoy the music of money rolling in. So, all of these aspects of talking about this, and far as the, I'm going to close on this part as far as the lineage of what's going on today. Yes, it's quite impactful and insightful to learn these things and understand this about the aspect of music, MTV. But on the other hand, it just still begs the question about the aspect of, is that really a good thing to keep, from, look at it from this point of view, keep, dishing out preservative programming. For instance, what I mean by preservative programming, as far as, reality television is prevalent with MTV, and then it gets more and more as the generation has gone on, more and more deviant, and all of this. Why not just get back to the basics again and revamp the idea of how music is prevalent in this society, in this generation today. How youth view music and so forth. And I think that would take on a whole new presence of MTV, and then its future. But then again, it's that whole here and now thing. The foresight of that, and how that goes into the whole aspect again of, we're just thinking about the here and now, and this is what's popular now, and just forget everything else. So, what do you guys think? What do you all think about the aspect of MTV, of what it was and what it is today, and then the aspect of reality television, and how that all fits into the format of network TV per se, or cable television and things like that, and then in the aspect of how we view television per se, or shows per se, through streaming devices of today. So please feel free to either email me, follow me on X, the Substack, or on YouTube. It would be greatly appreciated. All right, so this reaches the end of the Harboring Light. Tune in, turn up, and absolutely take care. Bye-bye now.